The Fed, the former heads of the Federal Reserve are calling for an independent central bank. In an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, the four former Fed chairs wrote that the U.S. central bank must be able to make decisions, quote, based on the best interest of the nation, not the interest of small group politicians. Joining us now, Yahoo Finance's Brian Cheung with more on this story. Brian, we have had some attempts for politicians to meddle in the Fed affairs in the past. But this kind of op-ed, it does seem pretty unusual.
Yeah, fairly unprecedented, and worth noting that this represents all of the living former Fed chairs. So as you mentioned, Paul Volker, Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, and Janet Yellen all coming to the defense of the Federal Reserve's independence in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, saying that the Fed needs to be free of short-term political pressures, and that it also needs to operate without any sort of fear of its leader, the current chair, Jerome Powell, being removed early in his term. An interesting quote, kind of the punchiest part of the Wall Street Journal op-ed yesterday, saying, quote, even the perception that monetary policy decisions are politically motivated or influenced by threats that policymakers won't be able to serve out their terms of office can undermine public confidence that the central bank is acting in the best interest of the economy. That can lead to unstable financial markets and worse economic outcomes. So the former Fed chair is saying, look, the Federal Reserve needs to be insulated from political pressure, not saying Trump by name, but warning that the pressures that Jerome Powell has faced have been fairly unprecedented to the point where this type of unprecedented op-ed is warranted in the first place. As a reminder, President Trump has been pushing on the Fed to ease rates a little bit easier. The Fed did ease rates by 25 basis points in its meeting last Wednesday, but President Trump tweeting shortly after that decision that he would have preferred a more aggressive rate cutting cycle.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Let's turn to the panel on this. How do you separate out the politics from the Fed at this point, David? Because the Fed has said one of the major reasons we have to cut is because of the tariffs. The tariffs are a political tool. So is it even possible to separate the two?
Well, you never can separate completely the politics of a government from its central bank. I chaired the central banking series of an organization called the Global Interdependence Center. We have a college of central bankers. The central banker is not in a symmetrical place. No president has praised the central bank, and no president has ever said, please raise the interest rate. You never hear that. So you have no symmetry. The central bank has to make a decision under political pressure everywhere in the world. When they succumb to the pressure, you get a Zimbabwe. You get hyperinflation in Venezuela, Turkey.
Can we just point out, and Sibile, I'm going to bring this to you, but let's pull up the Dow right now because we dipped into negative territory. So this rally, recovery, whatever you want to call it, we're barely up above 6 points at this point, and we'll see what happens as we go forward. The facts on the table. We're going to hear from different Federal Reserve Bank presidents over the next couple of weeks. They're meeting in Jackson Hole for they call it the symposium. It's a big party as well. And then we get the meeting in September. The pressure is on. Do you think that they stay the course, or can they make the argument we need another rate cut? Forget the trade war. This is pressure on the economy.
Yeah, I think the Fed should stay the course and not just cut rates every single time there's political pressure to cut rates, or when the market has priced it in and expects the Fed to cut rates. I mean, we've got here in this op-ed, and it's really remarkable, you've got former Fed chairs. They represent about 40 years they've served the U.S. government, the U.S. economy, and they're saying we really have to separate. You really can't be a political hothead and just go with the waves, the movements of investors and analysts and what they'd like. You really have to focus on what's best for the U.S. economy. We're talking about the United States here, the largest economy in the world. This is not a game. We can't play with this. This is not about the 2020 elections. This is about U.S. citizens and their survival.
All right. Sibile gets the last word on it, and you're agreeing because you're doing
bravo, bravo, bravo.